Nick Stahloch. Nick joins us from over by Hannaford, North Dakota. Nick farms, but according to that picture in the background, he also drives some fairly big equipment when it comes to road maintenance and snow removal. Nick, how are you today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on.
That's an excellent background. Nobody wants to see, just a blank wall, and he's got nothing but a line of equipment behind him. So for those who are following the live stream, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or Acres TV, you're going to want to catch this. This looks pretty cool. Nick, let's start by talking about your farming operation. What do you do? How'd you get into farming? Because I don't know that this was always your plan, was it?
Well, I've always worked in agriculture in the summer. I used to run a snow removal business in Fargo doing some commercial stuff as well. And summertime worked for a farmer. And in 2016, we decided to move back up here to the in-laws' place and start farming with my father-in-law. So we decided to do that. And after we moved back up here, I continued to do snow in Fargo for about 2 years. And we decided that that wasn't working because that was too much of a commute every time it snowed. And so the opportunity just kind of came about to start doing some township roads. I was going to just do my township, buy an older blade, and then some other townships got word of that and started calling me, wondering if I wanted to do their townships. So in the long story short, we invested a little more in equipment, took on a few more townships, and it's turned into our winter work, I guess.
Okay, well, speaking of roads, Nick, I need you to hold on for just a second because we have John on line 1, and he's got a little bit of a road report. So hold still for a second, Nick. John, why don't you tell us what you see out there? Hi, John.
Is John there? Did we lose him?
We might
Let's
have
put
to
him
come
on
back
hold,
to
see if we
John.
can get
all
back
right.
to him.
We got him?
Okay.
Jacob said we got him now. Go ahead, John.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Hi. Hey, just a heads up. I just had to run up to the north side of the airport here, and as soon as you pass 19th Avenue, blow ice is forming on the roads, and I was right down to 35 miles an hour with this empty truck. So heads up, everybody. It's here for the afternoon.
Thanks, John. We appreciate it. I think we got a call, Jacob, earlier from somebody that was on the interstate system down in just south of the border in South Dakota and said the roads were really getting bad. And just noticing here at the studio, the winds have really ramped up. So we're going to see a lot of blowing snow and deteriorating conditions for the rest of the afternoon. So please slow your roll out there.
So, Nick, is a guy who actually has to deal with that snow and weather, both in your career as a farmer and for snow removal, does this kind of day make you look forward to tomorrow when you got to go move snow? How does this affect your life?
It's not nearly as fun as it used to be, I'll tell you that. When I was in college, moving snow was more of a entertainment thing for me and make a little extra money on the side. But, doing township roads, it's not like it was doing commercial snow in Fargo. That was basically all overnight work because you had to be there when the vehicles were out of the parking lots. And for the most part, this township stuff is daytime work. I mean, we do start at 3 in the morning sometimes, but so, I mean, it's not that bad,
Hey, and Nick.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dean.
All right.
Because after that,
okay. Nick, when you're doing some of those roads, a lot of that's gravel or dirt. When you're plowing off the snow, how do you prevent from really just tearing up the roadway and instead of just getting the snow off the top? I know that might sound like a silly question, but I know
Nope, it's not at all. So most of my plows, we've got either wheels or shoes on them, and we can set that cutting edge just above the gravel. So we usually try and leave a ½ inch of snow, basically. But yeah, it can be a challenge sometimes because the shape of your road will change a little bit. So yeah, you don't want to try and throw the gravel in the ditch. You want to try and just leave that as little as snow as possible and leave the gravel in place.
Right.
A lot of winters, when it freezes up, we've got good moisture, and that gravel kind of adheres to the surface, and it's not such a big deal. But now, like this fall, we were so dry that none of that gravel really froze down. So if you're going along and your plow starts hopping this winter, I mean, we're really gouging into the ground, and you can throw a lot of gravel fast if you're not careful.
Yikes. So, okay, Nick, you've been using a term that we need to define for folks who are listening, and you've talked about the townships, and so have I. All right, do you want to give the definition of exactly what's a township, or would you like me to do that?
Well, you can probably give the definition better than I can, but we're
Okay.
you know, I'm not doing county work. I'm a private contractor, and I contract with the townships. So.
Mhm. So for folks who are wondering, when you think about the way land is platted agriculturally, a township is 36 sections. Each section is a mile by a mile. So now you have a 6 by 6 square that becomes that township. Fun fact, if I remember this correctly, usually it's about section 16, because each one of those sections is numbered. Usually it's about 16 that was always platted where the school sat within those townships back when we had one-room schoolhouses. So that's what Nick is doing, is he's working within those townships that have that 6 by 6 grid, but also they all have their own like little government entity. Some are incorporated, some are not, and that's who you would contract with, correct, Nick? Would be with the township boards?
Yep.
Okay,
There's
so
usually
within
private
counties.
board members on each township, and that's who I work with, is the road supervisor for each township that I do.
And it's up to you to keep that maintained for plenty of farmers too.
And
Yep,
Nick,
you know, in the winter time, our main goal is to try to keep the main bus routes open, you know, first things first, and then we'll come back and do secondary roads later on. But our main goal is to get everybody one way in and out to start out with, and go from there.
And Nick, during harvest time, when all the heavy machinery is out on some of those township roads, how much damage does that do to the roadways, and how often are they quote unquote re-graveled?
Well, graveling usually takes place once a summer is generally what happens. We pick the roads that need the most work, and we'll put gravel on them. But yes, heavy trucks is the biggest thing. And depending on moisture, you know, if it's a wet fall, yeah, we really tear up the roads. Generally, I try to get the roads in decent shape right before harvest. That's one of the things with me farming myself, is sometimes when I should be out trying to fix these roads because of truck damage, I'm actually harvesting myself. But it works pretty good. I mean, I've got a couple guys that help me out, and they are good at running the equipment too. So.
And Nick, you know, we were kind of talking quite a bit about winter weather and road maintenance, but you know, it's not just winter when roads need maintenance, and Dean was kind of alluding to that with around harvest time and the equipment on it, but summer weather has a big impact on the roads out there too. How does flooding and washouts affect your job, and how much goes into repairing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the spring. Last spring, we had some early rains that came pretty heavy and fast, and the ground wasn't thawed yet. And that played a big part in a lot of culvert washouts and roads washing out. So that's one of the major things, you know, in the first thing in the spring is to get those fixed. You know, another thing is if the roads have high shoulders and the water doesn't drain properly off them in the spring, they'll just turn to mush kind of, you know, and that really raises havoc on them. Generally, after we get any washouts or major damage like that fixed, that's when we'll start trying to pull shoulders as soon as it's dry enough. There might still be snow on the ground, but if the shoulders have dried off, you want to start getting those shoulders pulled in right away, because you've got all that vegetation that'll start growing. And after you do that, you've got a mess. You'll end up with 2-foot high chunks of sod on the side of the road, and you don't want that. So that's
Right.
kind of where we start in the spring.
And how common is that to have washouts and erosion on these gravel roads? Is it a pretty common thing that you come across in spring and summer with the torrential downpours that we often get?
Yeah, I would say it is pretty common. I mean, obviously some years there's way more than other years. You know, last spring we had a lot. The spring before there was a couple spots, you know. On an average snow melt, I mean, yeah, you're gonna get some of that. It's even on hilly roads, you know, it'll run down the shoulders and it'll wash the shoulders a little bit.
And Nick, I mean, you're out in the middle. I'll call it the middle of nowhere compared to some of the, you know, some of the city areas, and I'm sure you run across some strange things. Possibly, what would be some of the weirdest things that you've seen while you're out maintaining the roadways?
Oh, you know, I don't see nearly as much weird things as I did when I used to do snow removal in downtown Fargo in the middle of the night.
Really?
I'll say that.
Well, yeah.
You know, I wouldn't say that I really see a whole lot of weird things. I mean, I find things on the side of the road, you know, phones. I've found cash before. It's like, what's a $20
there you go.
bill blowing out here? But there it is.
Have you ever been able to be lucky enough to help like a stranded motorist, and they're so grateful that, you know, we thought we were, you know, stuck out here, and thankfully you came along.
And they're tipping him. That's what that cash is.
That's what the 20 is.
Yeah,
that's the 20.
This happens often. A lot of times, you know, I've pulled out the postal people, I've pulled out the school bus, I've pulled trucks out, you name it.
So are you generally doing this during, you know, daylight hours, or, you know, pre-sunrise and sometime after sunset, or are you kind of 24/7 whenever a job needs to be done?
You know, if it's a big storm and we've got lots of snow and we got to get these roads open, we'll run 24 hours a day. But on your general, you know, 2-inch to 6-inch snows, I mean, we'll start at 4 or 5 in the morning just to try and get the bus routes opened up and then hit our main roads. And generally, you know, we're running 5 townships for snow removal. With 3 pieces of equipment, we can get through those in about 6 to 7 hours on a general snowfall. So usually by late afternoon, we're wrapping things up. And the wind plays a big part in it too. We always wait till the wind goes down. That way we're not out there wasting time.
Right, and I'm sure you're keeping a pretty close attention on the roads while you're working, but I mean, you probably see some pretty nice sunsets, sunrises, anything with northern lights or meteors. And I'm kind of referring to that because I just got a notification that NASA confirmed a half-ton meteor just crashed into South Texas, or from the other night, there was a meteor that crashed into Texas. So anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, you see it all: sunsets, shooting stars, northern lights. It's one of the things about working overnight, I guess.
So I'm going to take some questions back towards farming, Nick. And that is, as a guy who's gotten into it, you said it was about 2016 when you moved back out towards the farm. So you're still considered a pretty new farmer. And what's your advice to folks that are wanting to get started? Do you start playing the farming simulator game and making money like the guy in Iowa? Or do you do it a different way? What's your advice to those folks who want to just get started?
Well, I would say listen to your elders. Take advice from experienced farmers. You know, I was fortunate enough. My father-in-law, he's very knowledgeable, and his brother that he farmed with, and that's how I got started, and took a lot of advice from them, and it's worked out. So,
what do you think was the biggest piece that they gave you that was important?
Well, I mean, you know, don't spend all your money your first year of farming. You know, you're going to have unexpected expenses all the time. I mean, you know, you don't know what the market's going to do. And you know, that's one of the big things is invest wisely, I guess. Yeah.
So with your proximity in the countryside out in Griggs County, do you find yourself doing a lot more of your own mechanics work versus if you were, say, maybe closer to a dealership, et cetera? Does that weigh in on some of your purchasing decisions as well?
Yeah, it does. You know, the trouble with a lot of this newer modern equipment is there's, you know, you can wrench on certain things, but so much of it is electronic. Half the time you don't even know what's wrong with it until the dealer comes out and hooks their computer up to it. So that plays a big part. And, you know, I mean, yeah, the dealers aren't real close to where I'm at. I mean, our major dealer that we have is 60 miles from us, you know, but they're really good about getting out here if it's during planting or harvest and taking care of us. So,
you know, for getting into farming relatively new to it, what would you say has been like one of the biggest challenges or something that you didn't quite knew that you struggled with doing it, if there is any?
You know, I went to school for diesel tech and more mechanical type stuff. So, you know, marketing is kind of, you know, something that I had to learn a lot about when I started farming myself. We do use a marketing firm that helps us with that. So that has helped me learn that aspect of it. I would say that that's the biggest thing. You know, with me working for a farmer for all those years before I started farming, you know, the actual planting of the crops and harvesting, you know, that part, I knew how to do that. It's the paperwork side that I had to do some learning on.
Well, you haven't incorporated any livestock into this operation yet. How long until you I see you shaking your head.
Nope, not happening. When would I have time for that?
You're right. You're probably not really going to be bringing in any new flocks or herds anytime very soon.
No.
Question about back to road grading. There's a number of folks that use some dust retardants, you know, there's some soybean-based products, et cetera, on their gravel. Is that in any way help or hinder you with what you do with the maintainers, or do you think that those are a good idea at all?
Well, you know, they are a good idea. The only trouble with it is once you put it down, generally we don't blade through it. You know, that most of that stuff is attracted to moisture. And of course, depending on the summer too, if it's a dry summer, you kind of lose it over time. But, you know, it has its place.
Okay.
You know, I guess if I lived right on the county road, my house was right there, I'd want it in front of my place for sure. You know, I'll live with some washboards on it because it can't be bladed, you know, but.
That makes a difference. So Nick, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. We hope that from now on, you're going to want to subscribe to the LRC so you know when those storms are coming, and that way you can start planning for your manpower needs as well. But how will folks find you if they would like to ask more questions or get involved in following what goes on with your business?
Well, my business is on Facebook. We have a page. It's called Red River Snow Service. And I guess that's where I put most of my updates. You know, in my line of work, I've got my 5 township contracts, and I'm not really looking for more business. It's we're maxed out. Let's just put it that way. So, but we do. I keep the Facebook page updated, so when there is a storm, people know what's going on and what we're seeing out there, and when we think we're going to have the roads opened up and stuff like that.
So what you're saying is you need more labor so you can buy more equipment so you can take on more townships.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Justin, I just found you a weekend job. I got one for you. All right.
I'm always looking.
They did cancel school up here already today because the weather's gotten quite bad. The wind has picked up, and so it's not good out there.
Well, let's keep an eye on the weather. We're going to recap that after we catch up with the American Ag Network. Thank you again to Nick Stahloch from Hannaford for spending some time with us on the phone today to talk about his farming operation as well as his work doing county road grading business with townships. So we'll be right back after this.